Fred, how are you?
Great, great.
Hey, let me say, it is weird and awesome to see your face because I follow you on Twitter. I had no idea what you look like. The fact that it's like Pinocchio. He's a real boy. The fact that you exist is
Yeah, yeah. I don't usually post pictures of myself.
so. First of all, love what you do. I just want to kind of know that because I have the book and I want to talk about the book and some of the stuff here. But I just want to know kind of the genesis of this and when you started it. Was it a you thing or did you think it could possibly blow up like it has?
No, not at all. I mean, I started it because I was using Twitter all the time, just for getting my news, like sports stuff. This was like 8 years ago. I started it as a counter to just sports media folks reposting their accurate predictions along with self-congratulatory messages to themselves. And I said to myself, someone should be the person to repost the tweets and the quotes where some of those media folks turn out to be wrong. And I just became that person. I didn't expect it to become big, but it did. At that time, I don't think people weren't using search as much, or going back and finding other tweets as much at that time. I don't think people knew how good the search function was or how easy it was to use.
Is it pretty cool when someone like a Scott Van Pelt, or I mean, I could list a lot of the people who will then send you a message to being like, like they're just talking with you, or whomever runs the account, Old Takes Exposed. Like I'll see these guys be like, yeah, da da da, and they'll mention you in a tweet or something. Like that's pretty cool when people who are like really respected in media acknowledge that what you do is actually a service.
Yeah, yeah, it's always cool. I mean, at first it was really, I didn't even know what to do with it, but now it's yeah, every time it's cool. It's cool sometimes when there's someone who you don't know that they even knew about the account will tag me in something. So a player or something like that, a good player, or a good coach, or a GM.
I get a lot of people tagging you in my account that I just know, and they're constantly going, if you see somebody post something, even recently, and I'll see 4 or 5 people tag you just that I follow because I follow you and them. But I got to assume your feed is constantly filled with people who are constantly finding old takes that were wrong or kind of wrong. Is it just you having to dive through and figure out the ones that are worth reposting?
Yeah, it's so many. I mean, well, 70% of it, I get constant tags, but 70% of it are either ones I've used or one that I just was tagged to 5 minutes earlier. Sometimes when something happens, 25 people will tag me to the same one at the same time. So you have to wade through all that. But yeah, it's great with everybody tagging me, because then they remember, fans remember what people say, or especially the reporters. The report, like a person who does TV or radio, does a 3-hour show totally about sports, they don't remember what they said the day before. But a fan, if you're a fan of the Knicks, and Nick Wright or someone on Fox Sports said something that the Knicks stink, all Knicks fans will remember that and save it for years. So they'll all be happy to send it to me. And it happens with any sport, any team. Sometimes it's just too niche for me to use. But let's say, Drake women's basketball won a game. Fan will send me something that someone said they weren't going to win the game. Like it's like that. Any type of sport, in any type of level.
I have the book here. I'm holding it up for the camera. It is Freezing Cold Takes. And, this one's football predominantly. And so is this the first time that you've been able to make money off of this specifically?
Well, no. I mean, I make money in other ways, promoting whatever people want to promote, or, trying to promote different different websites and their articles and things like that, but mostly on Instagram. Twitter's harder. But yeah, I mean, this is the first big project I've done. This book, yeah, it's really what I wanted to do from the beginning. After a year of doing this, I've never gotten into the gambling thing. I've never gotten into, and those are the people who try to reach out to me, have me promote their stuff all the time, and I've never gotten into just promoting other things that I know nothing about. But the book is what I really wanted to do.
So in the book, it's not just a coffee table book if you're just putting old tweets out there. What I like is you actually dive into stuff here. And for example, Bill Belichick. That's a pretty famous one. Like, give our listeners here, because this is such a good story. I think it would make our listeners go, okay, I'd like to read more in a similar vein. Kind of give the Bill Belichick story.
All right. Well, so Bill Belichick was one of the most ridiculed coaches when he was hired by the Patriots, and one of the reasons why is because he had been a head coach for the Browns, the old Browns, before they moved to Baltimore, and he was the head coach of that team, and they had a losing record. He made the playoffs once, and then he ended up going back to being an assistant coach for Parcells, which he had done before with the Giants, and after 3 years, he was with Parcells with the Patriots, and then he moved on to the Jets with Parcells. And in 2000, in January of 2000, after Parcells left, he quit the Jets. And in Belichick's contract, it said that he would become the head coach of the Jets as soon as Parcells quit. He was the defensive coordinator before that. And after 1 day with the Jets, he quit. And he did it on a press conference where he read a note that said, "I quit as the agency of the New York Jets," in this typical Belichick manner. And he took so much crap from the New York media for it. There were articles about how he was too afraid, he could never be the head coach, and all this type of things. And he quit because he wanted to become the head coach of the Patriots. And it took 3 weeks of legal crap. And the Patriots had to give up draft picks in order to get Belichick because he was under contract with the Jets. And there were so many articles within those 3 weeks talking about how Belichick, why do the Patriots want him so bad? He has a losing record. He can't talk to anybody. What's his name? The guy from ESPN, Adrian Wojnarowski. He was a writer for in a local New York paper or New Jersey paper. I think it was the Record or something like that. And he wrote that Bill Belichick will never be a head coach. He's not good enough. He doesn't have the people skills. He should be behind in the basement looking at film. He was particularly hard. He was a beat writer at the time covering the Jets. And so when he eventually got hired by the Patriots, all the New England and Boston media started railing on him. So it was like a month worth of articles and talk show people just going after Belichick. And even after his first season, they went 8-8 or something like that, or they didn't make the playoffs. I think they had a losing record. It could have been 6-10. His first season with New England, and then his second season with New England, they were 1-3. And then Drew Bledsoe got hurt, and Tom Brady came in, and everything kind of just shuttled from there. But Bill Belichick was probably the hire of Bill Belichick was probably one of the most scrutinized hires I've seen.
Football media's most inaccurate predictions and the fascinating stories behind them. You can get the book on Amazon. And what I like about it too is you don't have to be like a nerd like me that really likes the granular part of the game. This is fun for that, but also if you're just a casual sports fan, I think it's a really cool kind of recounting of history.
It's a la carte. The chapters are a la carte. You don't have to read the first chapter to read the third chapter. You could pick and choose, and it's a lot of like the Belichick chapter. I just go through the whole context of why people were saying what they were saying, and some could read it and say to themselves, "Oh, I can understand why they didn't like Belichick." The article, why these articles were being written. One article said it had the headline, "Belichick, the Patriots are making a huge mistake with Bill Belichick," and it's one of the most passed around articles because of the headline.
I bet you get a lot of draft analysis that was way wrong, especially when draft season comes back around. I got to imagine people are tagging you in all kinds of stuff that you've seen 100 times about drafts 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Can you think of anyone offhand that you got a lot of tweets about where this is a terrible pick, ended up being pretty good?
Oh yeah, one of them. It's polarizing players. One of them is Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen was a mixed bag, but the people who didn't like him, they did not like him because he had there's specific statistics that will be relied upon, whether it's physical traits, which Josh Allen had great physical traits. That's why he was so high on everybody's list, but he had a terrible throwing percentage, completion percentage in college. So it was he's only being picked because he has he has great physical traits, and people would compare him to Ryan Leaf back in that time with Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning. in 1998, where Peyton Manning was drafted ahead of Ryan Leaf. And Ryan Leaf was supposed to be such a great quarterback. It turned out to be a huge bust. And anytime there's a big player or a big guy with big physical traits and didn't have the greatest NFL college career, Anthony Richardson's one of these guys who was just picked fourth by the Colts. He didn't have a great completion percentage, and he didn't have a great winning percentage. But he's an absolutely absurd athlete. So he's one of those guys you want to save what everybody's saying. There's a lot of guys who everyone thought was going to be great that turned out to be really bad. Those are fun too, like Josh Rosen.
2 final questions for you here. Number one, have you ever had writers or athletes reach out to you because you've upset them that they've exposed something they would rather not have exposed?
Yeah, I have. And sometimes I'll take it down because I'm not, if they believe that it's going to be harmful to them. But most of the time they're complaining that it wasn't, it wasn't wrong. They'll say, "Oh, that wasn't wrong. He didn't really turn out to be bad. He wasn't that yeah. But at the beginning, before I had a lot of followers, I used to get a lot of people would quote tweet me or reply to me that I was the loser or something like that, and because there was no really repercussion. But once I got a lot of followers, I would just retweet those people, and it was a bad look. It's always a bad look.
Final question for you. Because a lot of these shows now, and I could list 3 or 4 of them, they have people on for the sake of arguing, and sometimes people will take an opinion probably they don't really believe in. Do you ever have to dissect ones, see which ones are actually real and which ones were just for TV or clickbait?
Well, it's impossible to do that fully, but I think inherently most of the opinions that are made on TV are for entertaining the viewer, or else you wouldn't have the show. So, I mean, none of those people are going to say, "Oh, well, it could be a good game." I don't know who's going to win, but both teams have a good chance of winning. That would be boring. You'd be fired. But so they say things I think that they mean, but they say them a little bit extremely like hyperbolic. But some people like Skip Bayless, and there's others, I guess, you can tell right away this is their shtick. Like Skip Bayless will always say something bad about LeBron James. He always takes that side. Like you can't really take that seriously. But in the book, it's funny because in the book, I go over in the chapter about the Dallas Cowboys from the 90s. Skip Bayless was doing the same thing that he does now, but just as a columnist. And he did it with Troy Aikman. And there was a big controversy with him and Troy Aikman back in like mid-90s when he wrote a book and wrote that he heard rumors that Troy was gay, and Troy hates him forever since that. But before that, Skip would write an article every day about how he hated Troy Aikman, about how Troy Aikman was terrible, how he'd never win a thing, he never would do this, just like he did with LeBron. So that was his shtick forever. So I don't really take those seriously. I don't use him that much. And some guys like that. I try not to.
All right, here it is. Freezing Cold Takes. Football's and media's most inaccurate predictions and the fascinating stories behind them. I like it. I was going to like it even if it was a coffee table book because I thought that would be interesting, but it's even better that it's like, and I don't want to say in-depth because I don't want people to think that it's so inside baseball that you can't understand it, but there's some really great information in here that I feel like, and you just tell a story through what you do. It's not even that you're like, look how wrong everybody was.
Right.
You're able to kind of recount. Yeah, you're able to kind of recount history, real fun, big parts of history through what you do every single day. Hey, big fan of your feeds, obviously, and the part of the book that I have read, because I'm going to finish the whole thing, is really great. And thank you for the time, Fred. Really appreciate it. Good luck with the book.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, see you, Fred.